very characteristic of life. We're on a journey. This is a story about two people. The first one, John Ward. John was born around 1920. He had about 80 acres of land. He raised cows. He raised tobacco. Now, tobacco, he raised for, maybe 5 or 6 years. And then it just kind of became more commercial. To raise tobacco, you had to hang it in a shed. And you didn't treat it with anything. No hickory or oak or anything like that. You just let it dry. Now, in wet weather, it took a lot longer for it to dry. Dry weather could be as quick as a month. And then you take it to market. He made a pretty good living at it. And then the market shrunk. So on his journey, he tried something else. He raised a lot of cattle. And in treating the tobacco, he had to have areas of the barn separated so that air could get through. But once that was over, he did clapboards all the way, covered it up. Cattle, hay, all of that, very characteristic of farmers up in East Tennessee. Then he caught on to something else. Insulation. He was telling me one day, in a very fascinating way, that what he did with insulation, he would buy big 6-foot rolls, and then he would cut them the way the contractors needed it. If it was 8 foot, he would cut an 8-foot panel, and he'd make it 17 inches instead of 16 inches. Between the studs, it was normally 16 inches, but he always added a little extra so you could cram it in there and it would stay. He was just that kind of a person, active in church, loved the Lord. Then one day, now he worked so hard that in the evenings when he came in, he just sort of collapsed. Well, after about age 40 or so, his wife wanted to go out on Saturday nights and live it up. Well, he was too worn out. So she divorced him. They had 3 girls and a boy. And he then raised the girls himself. He was a sturdy guy, amazing man. Now back to the insulation. He would cut the insulation in a normal house with an 8-foot ceiling, 8 foot wide. Underneath the windows, 2.5 feet, whatever they required. He would load it up and have it ready, and up this driveway would come trucks, because everything was already for him, and that was great. He lived by himself until the girls were getting on and some of them getting married, leaving the house. He became interested in a young woman up in a hardware store in Kingsport, Tennessee. Nice looking woman. They began to date. He didn't just cave in every Saturday night like he did before. They went out. Then they got married. But working with the insulation, asbestos took its toll. And Mildred, she worked with him as health was failing. She did everything she could for him. And slowly, it was over. Just beyond this area here was a house that was built by somebody from New York City who had been a patrolman in New York City and still talked with that accent. Very distinct New York accent. When they moved down, they brought his father with him. Now, Mildred lived right up here where John had lived. So they asked her if she would look after the grandfather. His life began to wane away. She spent hours every day, made sure he got his medicine, made sure everything was taken care of, laundry. She even bathed him. Amazing woman. Then he died. Well, they were so impressed with her, they adopted her as a granny. And even today, after she leaves an assisted living place, when she runs out of money, they said, "Honey, you have nothing to worry about, but you're going to live with us." Quite a journey from tobacco to cattle. Life is like that. It's a journey. There are great times and there are miserable times. We want to cast the lot in and say, phooey. Life is not like that. It's full of everything. And that was the journey. Oh, and by the way, Mildred is Margaret's sister.